Time then for us to draw lecture 2 to a conclusion. We've been asking the question, what do adult humans compute that enables their moral intuitions to track moral attributes such as wrongness? And we've been considering two answers to this question. One, due to Sinnott Armstrong and colleagues, says that they compute their own emotional responses to experiencing or thinking about events and actions. When they feel bad, they judge that something morally wrong has happened. When they don't feel bad, they do not. So this view is based on a hypothesis about the effect heuristic and an interesting body of psychological theory, substantive and interesting. We've also seen, I looked at this more recently and more briefly, a different view which says that the thing that adult humans compute are the moral attributes themselves. The reason that I can track the wrongness of particular actions is because I'm computing that very moral attribute, the wrongness. And this is based on an interesting theoretical proposal, a hypothesis about a moral module. So this again I think is an interesting substantive theory that is worth taking seriously if we can find evidence that motivates it. Importantly, each of these views is a response to a different puzzle. Now let me remind you what those puzzles are, because this is in a way the key. This is absolutely the most substantial thing that we want at this point in lecture 2. What we want are the puzzles. And you might think, Steve, gosh, I've kind of taken you in a circle, so I sort of provided all sorts of evidence for the Sinnott Armstrong and colleagues view, and then I argued against it, and it sort of seems like we're going in a bit of a circle here. And I apologise, because I know that can be frustrating. I know that can be frustrating, and you're absolutely right to complain. Circles are not ideal trajectories for people who want to discover truths. Maybe they are actually, but I'm not sure about that anyway. It can be frustrating anyway. But what we got out of this is something substantial. What we got out of this is something substantial. It's not that we know which of these theories are true. I doubt that either of the theories are true. It's that we've got some interesting puzzles. So what are the puzzles, Steve? And the first puzzle is this question. Why do feelings of disgust influence unreflective moral judgments? And conversely, why do we feel disgust in response to moral transgressions? Take a look at Chapman and the notes to this part of the lecture for a particularly clear explanation of why this is puzzling. So what do I think? I think a puzzle is just a question that is difficult to answer. And I think that these questions are difficult to answer because if we accept the effect heuristic as an explanation for moral intuitions, we have brilliant answer to these questions. But it seems on the face of it that we don't have sufficient justification for accepting that hypothesis about the effect heuristic. And so we can't yet clearly answer this question. It's proven difficult to answer. Its status, at least for us for now, is that of a puzzle. Here's the other puzzle. Why is it that patterns in humans' intuitive judgments reflect legal principles they're unaware of? So if we think about the trolley transplant dilemma and other pairs that we get from the great Philippa Foot originally, that have come down to us from her, where people seem to make these judgments. McHale argues, I think quite powerfully, that those judgments are not in fact inconsistent patterns of response based on some kind of feelings or heuristics, but rather conform to independently proposed legal principles. And if that's right, we need to understand why our intuitive judgments, our moral intuitions, would reflect the legal principles that, of course, we're unaware of, right? Most of us anyway, because we're not, unlike McHale, experts in the law. So this again is a puzzle. And of course, it's easy to answer this puzzle if we accept the hypothesis that our moral intuitions are explained by a moral module, and the moral module encodes those principles, or principles which are close to what legal experts have been articulating about purposive battery. The problem, of course, as we saw, is that we don't have sufficient justification to accept that. So we can't give a convincing answer yet to this question either. Its status for us is also as a puzzle. Now here's the thing. Each of the views that we've considered so far is a response to a different puzzle. It provides a reasonable answer to one of the questions, which is the puzzle, but no good answer to the other. Right, and that in itself is a problem. So even if we thought we had sufficient justification for accepting one of these or the other, I would be reluctant to do that until I was sure that I could answer both of the puzzles. I think both of those questions deserve answers, and it's no good to focus on one and ignore the other. Right? There's a particularly difficult thing that happens when we put those two puzzles together. What we want is a theory that answers the puzzle about emotion and the puzzle about patterns in judgment, both of those things together. So this is why I think we've actually reached a good conclusion here. You might think, Steve, you've just shown a load of things can't be justified. Well, in a way that's fine, because of course it's not my job to provide the substance here. That's your job. I've just got to provide you with some pointers. Very nice position. But I think there is some substance, and the substance is, look, we've got two puzzles and we need a theory that can solve all the puzzles. Our task is to develop a theory that can solve not just some of the puzzles, the ones that we like, but all of them. It's got something compelling to say about them. The theory, of course, has to be theoretically coherent. We want something that makes some kind of antecedent sense, that perhaps fits with other theoretical ideas in other areas, in linguistics or in theories about reasoning or something like that. We want the theory to be empirically motivated. That's to say that we want it to be at least consistent with a very broad body of currently available evidence, and perhaps even to illuminate some of that evidence. And we want our theory to be one that generates novel, testable predictions, just like the hypothesis about the effect heuristic does. We want a theory which similarly generates novel, testable predictions. So here's what we've got in conclusion. We've got a mission statement. What are we looking for if we're to understand moral intuitions and the role of emotions in them? We need a theory that meets these criteria.